What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back to discuss this Detroit Lions 40-14 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday to move them to 5-7 on the season, and 4 of their last 5 are wins. So let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places, because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here, and we are back to discuss a win that was extremely impressive. 40-14 over the Jacksonville Jaguars in what was a huge game. If you were going to stay alive in the playoff race, you had to win this game. I understand that from the here on out with the schedule, almost every game feels like a playoff game, but it was that one, right? You're coming off a tough loss to the Buffalo Bills. You played with an energy. You played at a level that you said, man, we could beat anybody. And I think some of us felt like that throughout the season because we've shown that we can really compete with anybody. But can you beat anybody? That's a little bit different, right? Can you actually win the game? And recently, the Lions have found a way to close out games, specifically on the defensive end. And then you see them play the Giants, and they kind of just, like, dismantle the Giants. And you play the Bills, and I think nationally there was some respect given. Again, I don't care what anybody thinks. I think we know who this team is. And we understand what the Lions have gone through injury-wise, the guys that they're getting back, and why maybe they look the way that they look. They've went through a lot this season. But then to come back home after a tough loss and respond like this against a team that's been playing pretty well, against a team that just beat the Ravens. Trevor Lawrence is getting the hype. 40-14, you didn't punt. You scored every possession offensively. Oh my, that gives me Seattle flashback. 40 points, like, to me, that's still stunning. It really is, especially against this defense that across the board is pretty good. They're basically above average everywhere defensively, statistically coming into this game. They pretty much are. Specifically run defense. They're a pretty good run defensive team. And we know the Lions have leaned on the run game, specifically early in the season. It's started to draw back a little bit, but that's still the Lions. They like to run the football. To come out in this game, have Goff throw it over 40 times. That was their game plan. The success that they had, the way the offensive line performed. I mean, my goodness. And we're going to talk about it. We have to discuss this offense and defense separately because there's so many points that I want to hit on. However, before we get to that, you look at the Lions' remaining schedule. The biggest game of the year for the Lions, which will probably always be next week, is this Vikings game, though. I mean, you got a chance to move to 6-7, stay in the wild card race, stay in the playoff picture. Now, of course, if you lose that game, you're out of the divisional race. The Vikings will clinch it. So that is a massive game for that alone. But even though I think it's unlikely to win the division regardless of how you finish the season, this is massive, though, because it keeps you in the playoff race, and it's a team that you're up near the top of the NFC. They beat you the first time at home, and you felt like you probably should have won that game. The game's going to be massive, and to come off of this win heading into it, you got a couple guys that are kind of, in the wings, just ready to get back in there, right? Romeo Hora, according to Dan Campbell, may be playing this upcoming week, okay? Jamison Williams got his feet wet a little bit into this Jags game, and he may be in for a bigger role. So you have guys sitting there waiting, you're getting healthy. You've been through some things this season, and now you're getting prepared to play, which is going to be a massive game against the Vikings. Then, of course, you go on the road and play the Jets, which now are playing Mike White, but still, that's going to be difficult on the road. But that's probably the toughest team you have left if you just try to break it down by team. Every game's going to be tough, but it's probably the toughest one that you have left. Regardless, though, let's talk about this game. 40-14, still mind-blowing a little bit to me. Let's talk about this Lions offense. The Lions have been really good all year. I don't know if really good is the right word for it. I don't know what the best way to describe that is. They've been pretty good offensively all season long. Whether it's us taking a look at how well Ben Johnson does, the creativity that he has. But to me, it stood out when you haven't had guys. When you don't have 2 guards against the Buffalo Bills, and we know they give pressure, and you find a way to still be productive and aggressive offensively. Yeah, it has its flaws. It has its issues because you are missing guys. When you go into a game and you really don't have an outside receiver, and you still find a way to not produce at the same level as normal, but produce well enough to potentially win a football game. And the Lions have had to do these things, like every team has to, and that kind of signifies what a good team is because you're going to miss guys. You're not going to be perfectly healthy. It just ain't going to happen. Lions are getting there, but it's just not going to happen. It's football. Everybody's dealing with injuries, some at different places, some with more guys than others, but that's what we've seen for the Lions offense. So even when the numbers haven't always been there, you can watch them and say, man, this offense is good. This offense is good. Ben Johnson is super creative. They're squeezing everything out of this offense. And then you go into this game against a team that's pretty much above average every category. They're basically a top 10 run defense in terms of yards per carry at least allowed. This is a good defense across the board. They're young. right? They're young at linebacker, but they have some good linebackers. Their defensive line has great depth. They got a young edge rusher in Trayvon Walker. They got Josh Allen, who we know is a dog, which Penei Sewell basically just handled. this is a pretty good defense. All of a sudden, you're out one guard. You're out your right guard, of course. That's Ben Big V, but you're also out Evan Brown. You have KO to start at right guard who, watching him back, and I haven't got to see the All-22. I've only done like the broadcast version again and done work on that, but I haven't done the All-22. So there's certain things I'm not going to know that we'll know later on. But KO, I thought from the initial eye test and rewatching it one time, I didn't think he was great in this game at all. I thought he was probably the O-line that he picked out that probably struggled the most, but that's expected. However, he wasn't like horrible where it was, man, that guy is a complete liability. It wasn't good. Like, it was not great from KO at all, but I'm saying it wasn't a complete liability. It was like, we can't do anything with this. This is wrecking the game. That wasn't the case. And obviously everybody else around that played really well. Jonah had a couple little things here and there, but for the most part, they were very good offensively. Then he moved the receiver, getting J-Mo back. Now, J-Mo didn't really do much. He had one pass target, right? But specifically, just having Chark and Josh Reynolds, right? Jamison Williams kind of that guy we're waiting for, and then we can evaluate and see what that means when he's here. But we've seen a healthy Josh Reynolds, a healthy DJ Chark, and a healthy St. Brown. We have seen that this season. Now, we had it with Hawk, but we saw it at the beginning of the year. And we knew how explosive. I mean, this was the top offense in football for a while. And it was like, oh, okay, they can put up points, especially at home. This team can put up points with a healthy offensive line and those receivers out there. If they have those guys, they're going to put up points. Then you throw on top of that, yes, we don't have Hawk, but you throw on top of that Swift, who I would say is probably, he doesn't seem like he's 100%. His role continues to go up, and I actually have some good stuff for Swift. The biggest thing for Swift is I thought he looked better. That's the biggest thing I would say, as I thought he looked better, and there were a couple plays that stood out to me, and I was like, okay, that looks like Swift. I mean, we'll see where it's at, but first off, the screen. I think it was like 9 yards. No, it was 14 yards. It was a 14-yard screen. He didn't make anybody miss, but the cut you saw him get into his offensive lineman, kind of push off, cut outside, and pick up 14 yards. Like, that was a Swift type of play. That was not thinking, and that was just being creative and getting in space and just being the natural tough guy to tackle that he is. That's what he is, man. He's got that open field vision. Of course, the spin at the goal line when a guy breaks through, spins off, stiff arm, scores a touchdown. That one was great. But it was that little screen that stuck out to me. There was the 24-yard pass that Goff threw to Chark that it was almost like, Swift's like, why take the unnecessary hit with my shoulder? I'm just going to kind of go out of bounds here. But you did see later in the game that he cut back infield when he was working outside. He had an outside run that he broke back inside to get a couple of extra yards instead of just going out of bounds. I'm like, okay, Swift is looking better. It doesn't look perfect, but he's looking better. It's looking more like the DeAndre Swift we know. So you take all of these things, and it equals to an offense that does not punt, that scores every possession. I know there's little things that we're going to say, well, do this a little better. We can score touchdowns here. Yes, but you didn't punt. And this is not a bad defense. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be like, man, we're playing just a trash defense. So it's good, but it's also, this is a solid defense. Like, this is above average defense by all the numbers. And you did this? Jared Goff, he was 31 for 34 in this game, including 75% of his passes, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, statistically, it was incredible from Jared Goff in this game. Statistically, he was fantastic in this one, and I actually thought he played really well. Dan Campbell said after the game he felt like this was the best game a quarterback could play. Is that what Goff played today? He said it would be a completion day. Clearly, that was part of the Lions' game plan, was a lot of quick passing, but kind of play through the passing game a little bit. Like, this is a pretty good run defense. We're going to play through the passing game. Quit passing, get the ball out of his hands. It's a good defensive line in terms of pressure rate. So I think when you tie that with the biggest thing that I think we've seen so far this season, I know we touched on it multiple times, Jared Goff's comfortability within this offense. I think that is the biggest thing that you see in terms of growth from last year to this year, and it's continued to be that way. For trajectory with Goff's comfortability within this offense, knowing where to go with the football, the checks that they're making at the line of scrimmage. I don't know what they're always checking to at the line. I mean, I can see what they go to, but I don't know what they're checking from and all of those things. I'm not going to know that, but I can say that we've seen comfortability within this offense through Jared Goff, just knowing where to go with the football, moving defenders with his eyes. Now, he can do that. We've always seen him do that, but there's just a confidence about it. So you take that and you tie that with an offensive line that played so darn well that there was like never any pressure. Like, the pressures that they created were basically not instant. They were like, okay, Goff held the ball a little bit here. That's fine with me. He was so comfortable in that pocket in this entire game. You tie that with his comfortability with the offense, and you had a problem. You had a problem for the defense. You had healthy receivers, and you had an issue because there's just so many options. The creativity that Ben Johnson does to consistently get his matchups. We highlighted this all in the All-22, but consistently gets matchups, consistently create leverage for a guy like St. Brown. Isolate who we want to isolate. Oh, we want that guy on him? All right, we're going to isolate that. Pre-snap, oh, they're in man. Let me find this man beater. All right, all of these things creatively that they do. The only bad things you can really say about the offense was the 2 failed end arounds. I mean, those were the things like, oh, those didn't work too well. That's okay, though. One of them was still positive yards. couple plays stuck out to me with Jared Goff. The biggest one, two of them actually, but the biggest one was the throw to DJ Chark as the game was kind of wearing on. And this throw to DJ Chark, man, I mean, that just looked like Jared Goff probably in the backyard as a kid. I mean, it just looked like that, right? It was the, kind of a low snap, clean drop back, steps up in the pocket. You see a little pump fake, pulls that corner down the outside, I believe. I don't have the all-22. And then going behind that to hit the deep out route for DJ Chark. I mean, that one had some mustard on it, if they will say. 20-yard completion to DJ Chark. That was a play where, he looks real comfy back there. Like, he's just playing his game. Of course, speaking to the comfortability within the offense, to stand in there, take the hit on a free stunt rusher later in the game on your third down pickup to St. Brown one-on-one. You trust that he's going to win that. You put it up there, he takes the hit, delivers, 3rd and 7 pickup. Jared Goff's comfortability tied with pass protection led to this. And without saying, incredible game planning. I mean, I've tried to push that for weeks now, how fantastic Ben Johnson is with this offense. And just how he creates openings, how he creates matchups, how he destroys zone coverage because he finds holes. Like, there's so much that he does, and it's never the same. Like, they'll have concepts, but I'm saying if there's like a way to attack a team, it's going to be a different approach completely. Just take this game, for example. We threw it 41 times, and people say, man, we can't win if Goff has to throw it 40 times. I mean, we just won 40-14. Goff had to throw it 40 times. We did not punt. Okay, so it's always different. Also been games this year that we've looked at where it's like, we don't have an outside receiver. Okay, we're gonna have to use motion to try to get guys open. Okay, we're gonna use bunches. We're just creating leverage, creating openings, creating problems, making the defense tip their hand. Like, I got to give Ben Johnson his credit, but we've done that a lot. Another guy, St. Brown. I mean, this one almost just feels like at this point, it's like we say it all the time, so who cares? He's just at that level right now. You just expect St. Brown to go for 9 and 90. You expect 9 receptions, 90 yards, and that's just St. Brown did his thing. Like, that's really good, but we kind of expected. That's what St. Brown has played himself into, is he's just one of those guys you expect every week that he's going to do that. When he does it, it's like, what happened to St. Brown? I don't know. The biggest thing for the statistics was volume. All right? Everybody had volume in this game. Chark had his best day as a Lion. Chark had 2 great grabs. The 40-yard, 36 yards in the air pass to DJ Chark on the sideline that Jared Goff put on him, held the safety, came back to it on time, in rhythm, beautiful pass, and an awesome catch through the arm of the defender. The play action catch that DJ Chark had, where Goff with, I think it was like a 5-step play action, steps up, throws. Biggest thing that stuck out to me there, throwing the ball away from the safety, even though he kind of still ran through it. But the St. Brown, St. Brown's he's just incredible. I mean, I can't say enough about that guy. Chark kind of ran through it, but still, he tried to hold him off from the safety. Then it was an issue for Chark. He still caught the football. Reached back, grabbed it, took the hit, still caught the football. The only one that wasn't complete was, again, the back shoulder fade that was contested. Probably still could have been called a flag. Right? So volume was the big difference in this one. Even the little things like Khalif Raymond at the very beginning of the game, catching a high pass above his head, just going up and snagging that. It's like, oh, okay. It's Khalif Raymond. That ain't Brown. I think Goff said it perfectly. We said it a couple of times. Just the confidence that he has to throw St. Brown the ball. There was 2 plays. There was the very beginning where it was the dropped interception by the defense that ended up in St. Brown's hands. Now, I don't remember it perfectly, but I think like Goff hesitated, then he's like, okay, now I want to throw it. That was something that showed as the game went on. Like, Goff got so comfy in that pocket that he was willing to say, that one's not there. Let me wait and let me find something else. And when you're pass protecting like that, like you always say, if you get a good quarterback time in the pocket, because that leads to consistent results, you'll see if he's a good quarterback. And you saw that this dude, he was finding dudes, but he was so comfortable in the pocket, he wasn't forcing it. He wasn't like, that might not be open, I'm still going to throw it. It was like, okay, that's not there, let me find my check down. It wasn't hold the ball for 7 seconds, but it was like, let me get through that read, let me find my check down, let me find a second, let me move through it a little bit. I don't need to force that pass because they're going to pass protect around me, and I feel that comfortability with how well this offensive line is playing, so claps to them. But St. Brown's 2 receptions, the first one on the angle route that was almost picked off, where it was kind of undercut it, and St. Brown didn't catch this and then take the hit. He caught this while taking the hit at the 1-yard line. That was an incredible catch. And then to come back later, this was the hit after the catch on the deep, over route that he threw to St. Brown. Took it. We touched on it while in the live stream. It's awesome how fast he catches it and tucks it. Like, he protects that thing. This is why he's so reliable with his hands. He runs routes super nuanced. He's so smart sitting down. He's playing away from the safety, making himself a target for the quarterback. He does all the little things. But then this one, to catch that ball, take the big hit that he did, and then the next play, a play later, he was out there. Those were a couple throws that stood out to me, but this was, to me, just a combination of, look, you had a guy in Goff who has shown so much comfortability within this offense, who has so much comfort just throwing to DJ Chark and saying, man, you guys gave me an outside threat that I just did not have last year. Saw it immediately in training camp how dominant he was, and to tie that with pass protection and volume, right? You're not throwing it 25 times, you're throwing it 40 times. It led to the production that we saw. Fantastic game from the offense, and of course, St. Brown always sets that tone because he's a monster. But I got to give so much credit to this O-line. You know, without going into specifics, because I'll have to rewatch the All-22, the O-line did their thing, specifically in pass protection, and that was the line's game plan, so that's where they had to do their thing. Now, onto the defensive side of the ball, be overlooked because, you know, the offense did what they did. But there's a couple things, and actually, let me make one last point on the offense. One last point. This is not exact. Yeah, it is to the offense, I should say. We did call this out when the Lions were losing, and it was something I think was worth calling out. Last year, the Lions had way too many false starts. They beat themselves in crucial moments, delay of games, just dumb things, but specifically false starts. They were up there top in the league last season. This season, at one point, we brought that up. We were top 10 in the league in false starts. At this point in time, the Lions are currently have 13 false start penalties, which is tied between 12th and 17th. That number has dropped dramatically since early in the season when we pointed out how many false starts the Lions have had. We are not beating ourselves right now. Over the last few weeks, think about this. This game had one penalty for 10 yards, which was the holding on Jonah, which probably didn't have to be called. And there was some in there that could have been called, but that one didn't have to be. So you had one penalty. Week 12, you had 3 penalties. Week 11, you had 5 penalties. Week 10, you had 2 penalties. Week 9 was your last, big one where you had 7, and that was when you beat Green Bay. Your penalties have dropped dramatically. So I have to give them credit in that sense. They're not beating themselves right now. But defensively, you held them to 14 points. Now, there were some key things here. First off, I think your offense helped you because of the fact that a team that averages about 5 yards per carry, Travis Etienne, that after this game still averages 5.4 yards per carry and 21 carries per game. In this game, Travis Etienne only had 13 carries for 54 yards. You basically took the guy out of their game. I mean, he had some gashes in there. He had a couple short yard runs, which, so it wasn't consistent like 5, 5, 5. But you kind of took him out of that because you're scoring offensively over and over and over, forced him to throw the ball. And then the one touchdown drive they had in the second half was so darn long. I mean, it took so many plays for them to work their way down there. You didn't just give it to them. You made them work for it down the field. Start with this. I want to start with the defensive line because they're the easiest to see without the All-22. Couple things here. I think everybody, what you're seeing for this D-line is finding their role. And I think everybody has a role. You kind of know what they are. You're like, oh, this guy's good at that. And there's a couple guys that have burst onto the scene. Like Kaminsky has been awesome for us this year. He's been maybe our best defensive lineman from start to finish, win on the field. Then you also throw Lee McNeil, who is morphed into not only just a run stopper, this guy is a consistent pressure player. Like, he's just that now. In this game, it was like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it felt like by watching, he had probably the most impact on the pocket. Once again, Lee McNeil. And when he's facing, again, below average interior offensive lines, you know it. And it's like, wow, this guy he's not just getting pressure like, oh, that was a flash. He is consistently getting after the quarterback. And that was not something that maybe was even expected. But without having a guy like Levi, who was kind of expected to be that guy on the interior, he's become that. As a big 320-pound DT, he's become that within this defense. And you move over to a guy like James Houston. We'll give him his roses. He doesn't play very much. But that's because he doesn't really have much of a role outside of when they have to pass the football. And I understand it. It makes sense. I wouldn't have him out there aside from that. Also throw in Anthony Pittman, right? Pittman didn't make a play that flashes, but Pittman's pretty reliable when he's out there. He doesn't do anything crazy. He's not a great pass rusher, but he's usually in the right spot. James Houston, though, he has a specific role, and it's going to be important for him to figure out, how do I win to the interior? How do I set up counters? How do I win different ways? But he does bring something the Lions defense really does not have, specifically without having Julian and Charles, is that speed around the edge. And he would bring it to a higher level than either of those guys, even if they were here. But the speed tied with the dip around the edge is so unique because of his body type being 6'1". It's so unique for an edge rusher, which that and his build, it limits him to only playing on pass downs, but it's also very different. And I will say, he's going to have to figure out, how do I win different ways? Because, yeah, he's not going to win through your offensive lineman. He's just not going to continue to get movement. Side counter rush moves. I don't know, right? And rush lanes and all the things come into play. So there's only specific times you're using him right now. But he knows how he wins. Like he won at Jack State, he wins with speed and he wins with athleticism, that ability to dip underneath an offensive tackle. And I will say that sack that he had, and it was so unfortunate that Trevor got hurt, but he came back. But that was such an incredible play. I mean, he literally left the ground, jumped up in the air to pause that offensive tackle, got back on the ground, dipped underneath like leaning with the ground, and wrapped around and made the play. He just brings something a little bit different that the tackles do not see consistently. Like this was the rub route with Jerry Jacobs, but he has that ankle flexion as well as the shoulder dip and the dip ability tied with the change of speed, which is how he sets up tackles currently, unless he just wins straight off the line, but that's usually how he's going to win. He has that tied with being 6'1" and low to the ground, and that's just different than what most guys see. See what Aaron Glenn said, hey, we're teaching our edge. We got to play through the tackles, right? That helps us keep rush lanes and not just run around. That's the easiest thing to block. And it's perfect for us. Kaminsky, when he's on the edge, because of some of our injuries, he's going to win towards through and off his lineman more so than he is on the edge. Hutchinson can win through and off his lineman. You still see bull rushes that are like, oh, that's back in his lap again. But James does bring something just a little bit different to the table. That sack was incredible. We'll see what his role is, but if his role is just designated pass rusher, and you found that, round 6, you found a heck of a draft pick. He's got 3 sacks in 2 games. It feels like that's just, But these are legit sacks that he's getting. These are legit. He's just not playing a lot, and that's fine with me. Anybody would pay a lot of money for teams would pay a lot of money for a designated pass rusher because you just need guys that can get there. And because he brings something a little bit different, it is huge to this D line. But then I'd circle John Kaminsky. John Kaminsky has been fantastic, and he had a couple plays in this game. The first one I got to point out was a run play. It was a 3rd down, I think 6 from about midfield. They handed it off. The big thing here is the Lions, we know about 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. They go sub-package, so they take out their big guys. Aleem's out, usually. They'll take out Bugs or Benito. So now all of a sudden, your interior guys on that play was John Kaminsky and Josh Pascal. You're taking their big boys out. They decided to run the football. The O-line's going nowhere. It's still the same O-line. So when they run, you're thinking, okay, we might have an advantage here. You didn't. John Kaminsky won on the inside as well as Pascal and shut the run down for a 1-yard gain. By the way, he's doing this with a club on his hand. He broke down a pass on a 3rd down with a club on his hand and maybe could have had a pick if James didn't run into him. John Kaminsky he's been so good. I don't know how to say it. Like he's been the biggest, he's been like our Charles Harris this season. Like he's been that level, maybe even higher in impact and how much he's meant to this team because he makes everybody else better. He opens everybody up. The creativity, we know the Lions have gotten way more discipline on their D-line and gaps and make sure guys aren't taking off on them. Lawrence was a little bit different, so you could play him a little different. But Kaminsky has been consistently good. A couple smaller points here I will point out. I thought the secondaries, specifically in that touchdown drive they had, they looked pretty good in zone coverage. Like this is a team that sees a lot of zone coverage. And you saw Jared Jacobs almost come up with a pick, right? He was in a good spot there. You saw Will Harris make a couple of monster plays, right? Now there were some drops that definitely did not help the Jaguars. They had multiple drops from Zay Jones. They had drops from Evan Ingram. They had one on 3rd down. They had one on a drag. And it's like, well, that's kind of his history. So that's not a huge surprise, right? I mean, that's something you understand. But Will Harris had a great pass contestant breakup. He had a big hit that he laid. Will Harris is just like the energy giver, I feel like. But I also feel like there's just a confidence in that back end. There's just a confidence that back end plays with now. And you see it like Jerry's almost pick. Jeff Okudah. I mean, it wasn't a perfect day or anything. He only gave up 2 receptions, though. A couple of those were drops, of course. But in zone coverage, he was on it. He was on it in zone. That's what it seemed like without seeing the all-22. He seemed like he was on it. Yeah, you get times that get beat at times, man. Sometimes you get rubbed like Jerry did on 3rd down. Sometimes, off the slant, Kudo was beat, then he tried to recover, but the ball was dropped. So that was like, oh, that would have been a 1st down, but the guy dropped it. So that happens. But in zone, they seem to do pretty well. And there's a confidence level. Elliott set the tone. But ever since they've been getting some DBs back, Jerry and Mike Hughes, all of a sudden, doesn't seem to be a massive weakness in the Lions back end where teams can just say, I'm going to attack that, I'm going to attack that. The Bills started to. They tried to go at Jerry there for a few plays, and they end up scoring on Mike. But it's not like so glaring where it's like all game this is going to be an issue. We're going to have to figure out because we got to help this guy. Like, no, we are in that stage, right? We can double team certain guys, take guys away that you like to go to on 3rd down, but we're not in a spot where it's like this half of the field we can't cover. Like, it's not there. And ever since we're getting DBs back and cornerbacks back, which I thought when Jerry came back we'd win the first game he did. And I think we did. I think we did win the first game Jerry came back. So that played out true. And since that time, you're seeing that it's meaning so much for this defense. It's meaning so much for this defense just having that. It's not the best secondary, but it's not the worst either. And it's not just those wide open holes that you can attack. A couple flash plays I will point out. First off, everybody's getting in the load a little bit in this game. Duracell, his play he made on the screen was almost very similar to what Malcolm did last week where he broke it up. And, well, it was actually a drop. But this case, Duracell showed blitz on the right side, followed Etienne out of the backfield on the screen, and blew it up for a -4-yard catch on a 3rd down because he actually caught that ball. Derek Barnes had a -1 yard run stop on an outside play where he was just on it. Defensively, that's been the biggest thing. And on 3rd down, The Jaguars were 3-12, and you just go through them. 3rd and 1, incomplete. High, there was pressure on that play. Lions didn't get consistent pressure in this game. They did not, from what I've seen. But I think the Jags do a good job of having the best O-line. They protect themselves pretty well. They get the ball out quickly. They move the pocket. They get the ball out. Like, they protect their O-line. 3rd and 1, when you had to get on 3rd down, the Lions are getting better. And again, I think a lot of that does speak to sometimes some creatively, because I think the Lions are disguising a lot of things, which could be certain guys getting back, but also playmakers showing up on big moments as well. 3rd and 1, incomplete, you had pressure. Another 3rd down, 3rd and 3. This was a drop by Zay Jones. They had a 3rd and 6 pickup, which was the rub route that they hit to Christian Kirk. 3rd and 5, they had the 1-yard run. John Kaminsky shut that down. Playmaker making a play. 3rd and 7, John Kaminsky pass deflected. 3rd and 7, this was their one chunk that they picked up, was a 25-yard pass to Christian Kirk. 3rd and 6, incomplete, pressure on the play. That was all the first half. Second half, 3rd and 7. They had a 7-yard pass to Everett Ingram on Chris Board. They just isolated him one-on-one. The Lions got kind of aggressive, seeming on that touchdown drive where it was like, okay, some zero coverage, a lot of man coverage on 3rd down. And that's just Aaron Glenn. He likes to play man on 3rd down. I mean, just it is what it is. We know that at this point. And if that's what you're going to want to do, then you need guys that can do that. And a couple times it got us, right? I mean, you had that one, and there was also a 3rd and 11 on that one where they picked up 10, so it wasn't technically at first, but they got a 4th and 1, so they picked it up anyway. But it was, it looked like zero coverage. I don't remember exactly. Maybe I cover 1. It was a blitz, and you could see that they picked up 10 yards. He just sat down right in front of Kirby, who was matched up with Zay Jones on the play. A 3rd and 1, complete pass. A 3rd and 8, which was a negative 4-yard screen that Duracell blew up, and then a 3rd and 6, that was a 3-yard pass underneath. The biggest thing that stuck out was probably the touchdown the Lions allowed, where there was like seemingly no communication between Jeff and Kirby, and there was no fast motion, so there should have been communication. That may have threw him off. The inline tight end did the flat, and Jeff Okudah and Kirby did not switch. Jeff played his guy, and by the time the ball was out, he couldn't get out there and make a play. So that was the touchdown he allowed, and then they had the very creative 2-point conversion. We haven't seen like lapses in the back end like we had, but that, you know, there's still little things that pop up here and there. But with that, some of it's scheme, and it's just tough. And these guys are really creative, but obviously we know about that with Ben Johnson. Special teams, Michael Badgley has been really good for us. Khalif Raymond is a very good punt returner like he was last year. I'm so glad we brought him back for that. And Justin Jackson has been a very good kick returner. It's like, it's not a benefit for you to kick it short because he's probably getting across 25. That's just what it is. And I don't want to give all the credit to him. A lot of it's blocking, but he's the guy that will get the spotlight for that. But yeah, I mean, you kick it to us, we're probably getting past 25. Meanwhile, if you flip it and we kick it to you, you're probably not getting to the 25. So we have that benefit, and we have a fantastic punter. Like, right now, the Lions are playing at their best. Yes, they're getting healthy. I think they're getting healthy in key spots. I think offensively, it's been a pretty easy to follow. Like, when guys are there, you see it. But Ben Johnson, I think, has been so creative. So many flowers. Meanwhile, flip it. Defense has gone through some things. They shifted up by game. They do adapt their scheme by game. Like, I don't want that to be put out there. Like, oh, they don't. They're always the same. They're not the same. We've seen it. They're not. But getting a couple guys in the defensive back room has been huge, tied along with the D-line. I think you're finding roles kind of being like, oh, this is what he does. Oh, this is what I do. This is my role. And that's huge. And now we're in a position where we might be seeing Romeo next week, which I'm here for completely. I would love to see what that looks like. Would love to see it. Because in this game, we saw a lot of Austin Bryant. We saw some Anthony Pittman. Because of how they did things schematically, Romeo would have been awesome to see in this game because he would have started if he was healthy. But if we get him next week without having Charles, we'll see Julian's on IR, so he won't be here. He's probably going to start, I would think, if he's completely healthy. That will be massive to see what that looks like because obviously that's one of our highest paid players. And then flipping on the offense side of the ball, J-Mo. I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't like the narratives out there like, oh, he's only going to get deep passes. He'll get some. But Jameson Williams, I think long term, the impact that he has across the field, underneath passes, he was super dominant at Bama. Like, this dude's catch and get upfield is some of the best coming out of the draft. I mean, maybe the best coming out of the draft. His catch and get upfield, he is so good at that. Up there with like a Romeo Dubs, I thought he was fantastic at that. But anyways, that's beside the point. Point is, this was awesome. I mean, this was just awesome, and I don't really have any other words to explain it. 40-14. Hey, just if you're watching right now, you're still here. First off, give a clap for yourself. I appreciate you. And also give a clap for the Lions and give a clap for some Liquid IV. I got to show this off. Look, I don't need to be doing this, but I have to do this. All right, they hooked me up. You get promo code DoseOfDion. You get 25% off. I believe it's still 25% off. A link will be in the description. Also, you could probably just go to their website and use their promo code. I showcased this one. There's different flavors. Some of them are for energy, like this one. Some of them are for immune system. Some of them is just for taste. Well, not for taste, but hydration. But this one has been huge for me. I get up super early on some of these days. Sunday I started work at like 2:40 in the morning, right? So this stuff is a lifesaver. You fill it up. Hey, you pour one packet in with a bottle of water, and you're gonna like it. Like, dude, it's growing on me. I really like it. So have to push that because I appreciate them. But that's fire. But regardless, man, Lions are still in the mix. They're right there. Don't know why the Giants and Washington decided to tie. That was just I can't even explain that. That's just the Lions thing, right? We win and then you see that. You're like, really? Really? But, I mean, the Lions, they can beat anybody. And I think that's been proven true. So you keep up this energy, keep playing clean football. Who's to say you can't run the... I mean, look, I'm just saying. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching. And I'm out.